Welcome to Fans Without Borders. My name is Ray.
And I'm Brent.
How you feeling, Brent? You all right? You good? Cool?
I'm good. Sorry about last week, guys. One of those life got in the way situations. My fault, definitely my fault, kind of last minute. But I appreciate you guys giving us a pass on last week. But we are back, and at least for the time being, no foreseeable breaks in the future for a while.
Life happens. We know this. We all know and understand that. So yeah, it's all good. I mean, nothing happened. It was really just a week of me arguing with people about a nearly 2-week-old positive Superman Henry Cavill post. But whatever. It is what it is. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
Mm-hmm. How could I not?
Well, it's just
been all over.
Well, I don't understand. It was like it. Honestly, I've never had anything that I post go viral, and this didn't really go viral at all. 1,500 likes is not viral, but it's still the most attention I've gotten, like positive attention that I've gotten for anything that I've posted. And it's like the day I posted it, the trolls came out to play, and then literally, this was like 2 weeks ago, and then literally like day before yesterday, more came back. I'm like, what, why, what is the gatekeepers, man? I don't know. I don't get it. And then, we're recording this on Sunday, so how'd you celebrate Batman Day?
Well, purely by coincidence, I finished watching Batman Returns. I started it the other day, and then that yesterday was like the best opportunity for me to finish before we do our Squadcast Media Patreon recording for Batman Returns. And so I was finishing it, and I got done, and then I looked at Twitter, and I see all this Batman Day stuff, and I posted some stuff on my own, and then I was like, oh, I just watched a Batman movie. This Batman, I wish I planned it. I didn't. Pure coincidence, but that's really what I did.
So I did an episode about it on Flightcast, but then later that evening, I don't know if you've noticed, but like iTunes has had like a bunch of sales on DC stuff lately.
Yeah, I've spent some money on it. Bought a couple
and
things.
So they have like two different sections. They have one that's specifically like labeled FanDome stuff, and then they have one that's for Batman, which I'm assuming was for Batman Day.
Yeah, they had Batman Day stuff yesterday.
Right. So I went in there and saw that they had the 4 movie collection, the Burton films and the Schumacher films. They're on sale for like $20. And I was like, ooh, click. And then last night, Scott posted that he was doing his research, and he was posted on Vero that he was watching Batman Returns, and it's on HBO Max. And I was like, oh, I totally forgot all those movies are on HBO Max. Well, whatever. So
honestly, HBO Max is still taking stuff off on a regular basis. It's not locked in the way like Avengers Endgame, is on Disney Plus and it's not leaving Disney Plus, right? Like HBO Max is not locked in that way. I think your purchase is okay.
No, I don't regret it, to be honest. It was just one of those things. It was like, oh, I guess I didn't need to do it, but that's fine. I've got them. No, but what's funny is I didn't watch Batman Returns. I watched 89 over again. Because I was just testing.
It's like, you watched the wrong one?
No, I didn't watch the wrong one. It was just, I had it on. You know what? I was curious about the HD, because it's supposed to be in 4K. And I had it on the iPad. And so I just turned it on. And you know what else? I'm not going to lie. I've been having a lot of fun with the fact that now, thanks to iOS 14, I don't have to manually switch my AirPods from my phone to my iPad anymore. It does it automatically.
Huh.
Which is awesome.
It is awesome if I knew how to make it work, but I haven't really looked at it yet.
I didn't do anything. I mean, I think the most that you have to do is you just have to make certain that it's that each device knows of its existence, like if you pair it once, right?
Sure.
And so I have noticed that the phone will override the pad. That will happen. If I have something, because at one point I had like the phone going, and then I had the iPad going, and then like I switched to the phone, and as soon as I touched the phone, the iPad it switched over.
Nice.
And then once I put the phone down, it switched back to the iPad. But no, I was just testing to see what the high def looked on the iPad, and I just picked the first one, and I was only going to watch the opening credits.
Yeah, you watched the whole movie.
That turned into watching the whole movie. It's like, okay, listen, I've seen those movies enough. I don't need to rewatch Batman Returns. I'm going to. It's going to happen before our review on Tuesday, but yeah.
I needed to. It had been a long time, and I was like, I remember all the beats. I remember in specific scenes. There's some stuff I did not remember. We'll save that for the review. But I enjoyed it. I'll just say that. I enjoyed revisiting Batman Returns on what ended up being over 2 days, but finishing it up on Saturday. So
cool. All right. Well, yeah. So no, I took a break from the Superman arguing to pay tribute to Bruce Wayne, the Dark Knight himself. But yeah, so that was yesterday. Other than that. Yeah, no, nothing has happened. We don't have much at all to talk about today. Certainly not a whole lot from the week prior, but whatever. We'll get into it here. But of course, this show is a part of Squadcast Media, which has DC Film Squadcast, hosted by Tim and Scott, DC Comics Squadcast, hosted by Jordan and Chris, and DC TV Squadcast, which currently is just me, although our next episode, I'll go ahead and reveal, we're going to be talking 90s Flash, the Flash 1990, and Chris is set to join me on that one. That's going to be a new one for me, because I've never watched that show. Like, I've obviously been aware of it, and, know of it, and, obviously with John Wesley Shipp having such a presence in the DCCW, it's been heavily, pointed to in that universe, but I've never fully watched that show, so that'll be an interesting one to dive into.
It's a fun one. It's interesting. It the first episode is like a double length episode or whatever, and I had a VHS tape of just that, and so in my head it was always the Flash movie, because it's that was the only things on it. When it was coming out originally, I saw that VHS. I saw many times. I watched it a lot. I really liked it. The actual rest of the episodes, I only saw bits and pieces of them, but I revisited them all before Elseworlds, and I went back through the whole series before Elseworlds. And there's some fun episodes in there. There's some good stuff, and I would anticipate you'll enjoy that look of it. And I think it just kind of makes it once you have that, it makes it cooler that they brought Shipp into the current Flash show. So it really just hammers that home. John Wesley Shipp, that might be the finest bit of DC legacy casting that there has ever been for me. So I don't know. It's definitely up there. I'd have to really think about that and look at the list, and I guess now I'd have to see what Michael Keaton does in the next movie, Flash, because I think that counts. He's playing the same character, so I don't know, but regardless, I think we can put it in the same category for that. So, but I love John Wesley Shipp as the Flash. So yeah,
that's a strong statement, because as we've touched on before in this show, DC legacy casting is.
Yeah, they're
almost it's legendary at this point. They lead the way in legacy. I can't think of another franchise that legacy casts quite like they do, especially with that universe.
Yeah, no, that universe is definitely at the forefront of it, and I feel like what they did with Shipp and getting him to play Henry, getting him to play Jay, getting him to play Barry again, all of it, just amazing work. But anyway, I look forward to hearing your discussion on that.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. That should be coming up within the next week or so. But yeah, that's what's going on with all the shows.
And then, of course, a special thank you to those of you who support us over on Patreon. I've not listened yet, but I saw the Rocketeer episode dropped. And then, as we just were talking about, we are going to be doing this week we're planning on recording our Batman Returns one, and so then that'll come out within another week or two after that. So we've got a little over 2 days left from that recording, and I'm looking forward to it. I actually re-listened to the Batman 89 discussion prior to watching the movie as kind of put my head back in the Michael Keaton Batman headspace going into Return. So it was fun to hear some, maybe some gripes or whatever about the first movie, and then reference that, they'll get addressed in Returns, like the Vicky Vale and the Batcave thing, and then it gets addressed in the second one. And when I got to that part, it just made me laugh even more because of remembering Jordan being so annoyed at that. But It's
Oh
good.
yeah.
So that's the stuff that we've got coming down the pipe. The Rocketeer's out. Yeah. Batman Returns is coming soon. So Squadcast, patreon.com/squadcastmedia if you're interested in that.
Yeah. When Jordan brought that up in the '89 review, that scene popped into my head immediately. I'm like, oh, he'll dig that. He'll totally dig that in Returns. Yeah, that was, especially the way it was presented. So, but yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun.
Okay, well, let's we've got several little topics here we want to touch on. I don't famous last words. I don't really see any of them being super long and in depth, but just things we wanted to touch on either from last week or that happened this week. So, Ray, you got to experience Star Trek Day. What was that all about?
Oh, it was the FanDome effect. It really was, and I mean, there was no other way for me to put it. The way that they orchestrated it, I mean, it was awesome. If you were a Trekkie, if you're a diehard Trekkie, like it's a great time to be a diehard Trekkie right now, in my opinion. And I'm surprised nobody has, like, if we have any Star Trek fans that have listened to our show, I'm surprised no one has corrected me yet and told me that I should be saying Trekker, because there's two different terms.
Really?
Yeah, there is. There's Trekker and then there's Trekkie, and there's like, depending on who you talk to, there's a connotation with either one. I don't necessarily like Trekker. I prefer Trekkie, especially since they made a couple of documentaries called Trekkies.
Do people think that Trekkie is like negative? Like
they think it's like noob, essentially. Like you're a newbie, you know, like it's kind of a, you know, or like it's, yeah, exactly, like, or kind of
which,
like
by the way, is one of the
dumbest
internet insults that's out there. You're such a noob. So whatever. Trekker, I don't like the sound of it, but only because I'm not familiar with it. Like, if I had referred to Trekkies as Trekkers for the last however many years, then I probably would feel that way about Trekkies. So whatever, I don't care.
Depending on the fan you talk to, and I mean, it's just like any other fandom, you have your purists and your people that, like, these are the rules, here's how you follow them. Whatever. We know how I feel about those people.
I'm going to stick with Trekkie.
Cool. I'm good with that. But no, the event was awesome. It was, you know, on September 8th, which is, you know, that is the actual date, the anniversary. September 8th, 1966 is when the first episode of the show aired, The Man Trap, way back when. And, like, it was an all-day thing, honestly. It was 24 hours. It was streaming on their website. And what it was, like, the panels were from, like, 3 p.m. Eastern time to about 6:30. And they interviewed everybody. I mean, when I say everybody, I mean, like, each cast. They didn't have everyone for every cast, but they got as many as they could. I mean, they really did. They got as many as they could. But I mean, from, like, all the shows. Like there was at least one representative from each Star Trek incarnation that has existed.
That's nice.
That they talked to. And some I didn't, like, they talked, like, Scott Bakula was on the Enterprise panel. That was cool. Obviously they it was great. The last one, it was Will Wheaton, because Will Wheaton was, like, the main moderator.
Nice.
I like and that. I'm horribly remiss. I didn't know this. Mika Burton, that's LeVar Burton's daughter.
Oh.
I didn't know that. I found that out that day. I was like, oh, I feel. And what was great was she moderated the Voyager panel. And LeVar Burton, back in the day, directed some episodes of Star Trek Voyager. So in the middle of the Voyager panel, he kind of photobombed the panel. He came in. She, like, took her AirPods out and was like, oh, someone wants to say hi. And he came into the frame and said hi to everybody during the interview. It was all pre-taped, but it felt like FanDome. The whole thing really felt like FanDome. The way that they timed it and the way that they spaced it out.
Which day of FanDome?
Oh, day one.
Okay.
It felt like day one. Yes, we'll get into that.
Good.
We'll get into that. No, it felt a lot like day one. We did get a couple, not a ton of new news really, but a few little tidbits here and there, like Tawny Newsom's new podcast that she's doing with Paul F. Tompkins about Star Trek. Tawny Newsom plays Beckett Mariner on Lower Decks, which that panel was hilarious. That was awesome because that was all of the principal cast members, including Jack Quaid and the others, and Mike McMahon, the show creator. No, it was a really awesome event. It was, and there were some great stories that were being told. And Will Wheaton is, like, a fantastic interviewer and a great moderator of these things. Like, he's like on Aisha Tyler's level.
Nice.
As far as moderators go, for sure. And this is Star Trek. It's his wheelhouse. he knows these people. He was the best one to do it. He hosts all of the, the Ready Room and all of the after shows for Discovery and Picard and everything. So yeah, he was the perfect choice to be the lead moderator for that. But no, it was that those panels were going on there, and then like the other rest of the time, it was a marathon of hand-picked episodes from each series, including Star Trek the Animated Series, which was really awesome that they recognized Star Trek the Animated Series from 1971, 1972. So
I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's old Filmation animation, I think like like the Super Friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of thing. Like it was around that same time. But
okay.
Yeah, it's 22 episodes and, half hour long. They got everybody. It's funny, Filmation was so expensive back then that they were able to afford everybody except Walter Koenig, who plays Chekhov in the original series.
I just looked at pictures of it. I have seen pictures of this before. So,
okay.
And yes, like it does look very Super Friends like.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally from that era, and it's really I have always considered it the unofficial fourth season of the original series because it's the same crew, it's the same ship, and there are actually there's some carryover episodes. Like there's an episode with the Guardian of Forever, which he was, there's an episode that comes from the first season of the original series. There's a Harry Mudd episode. There's a Cyrano Jones Tribbles episode. So there's a lot of threads that do carry over from the original series into that 22 episode run. And also Lower Decks has been referencing it a lot. In fact, this past week, Lower Decks had a character, Lieutenant Eric's, who is this like alien with 3 arms that was like the operations officer instead of Chekhov in Star Trek the Animated Series. It wasn't Eric's, but it was a character of his race that was just in an episode of Lower Decks.
Okay.
Like last week. So that was really cool.
Lower Decks is a comedy, right?
Lower Decks is definitely a comedy, but it is canon.
Nice.
It is totally canon. It fits in with Next Gen and Picard and Deep Space Nine and all that and Discovery. It's all that. It is a canonical Star Trek comedy, and it is awesome. I love it. It's so good so far.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean it was a really good event, and I hope that CBS, or what I guess they're gonna call it Paramount Plus next year. They're getting a rebrand.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring that up really briefly. I hope it's an event they do yearly. I hope they do it annually for Star Trek Day, because they really did an awesome job with it the first time, and they just followed the FanDome template, man. I really do think that FanDome has kind of started something with respect to. And FanDome Day 1 with a template on how to process and make these day-long events for these fandoms, and I'm really glad I wasn't expecting something like a copy to be that fast, because it hasn't been that long at all since FanDome Day 1. But for CBS to do it, I think it was a great move, and I hope they repeat it. I hope it's annual.
Good. Well, we've referenced it. We might as well talk about it. FanDome Day 2. So I was planning on the kids going to the in-laws, watching everything like I did FanDome Day 1, and then work got in the way, asked if I could come in that day. And had this been day 1 when it was sit in front of your computer at 12 o'clock or whatever the start time was, hit play and just watch, I would have said no to work. But because I knew this was different, all the panels are available, and you can watch them at your leisure, I said, okay, fine, I'll go in, I'll work, I'll help out there. And coming home, like I turned on one panel and listened to some of that, and watched a few others when I got home. Ray, I gotta tell you, FanDome Day 2 it's like totally different people did it than FanDome Day 1. And FanDome Day 2 is like the people who did Comic-Con at home did it, because it was basically just a bunch of Zoom meetings or Blu-ray extras from past seasons. Like Travis pointed out to me that there was this really cool Prometheus like little short from Prometheus from season 5 of Arrow, And I watched it. I hadn't seen it before. I don't even know if it's in the iTunes extras, but I hadn't seen it before. So I watched it. That was really cool. But it's like, you could tell like they did that for the Blu-ray for season 5 of Arrow. Well, season 8 just finished. It's like, well, that's all old stuff. And then I'm looking, it's like all these other like a whole bunch of Blu-ray extras from various TV shows. And I'm like, okay, it's fine that you put it all available, I guess, but like mixed in with everything else, it just felt like clutter. And it's like, let me see the new stuff. Let me find the Black Lightning panel because I want to check that out. Let me find the Superman and Lois panel because I want to check that out, etc. I don't know. For me, FanDome Day 2, like logistically, before we'll talk about the content in a minute, but logistically, I thought it was a bit of a bust compared to Day 1, which Day 1, to be fair, was a lot of Zoom calls, but they were different. Like they were set up different. They did like the Matt Reeves one where they were in like not in the room together, but it looked like they were at least in the room together. I don't know. I was not impressed with Day 2.
I wasn't either. It got off to a rough start because there were technical difficulties right off the bat. There was a problem that everybody was having because what happened was, this actually touches on what my biggest issue I had with Day 2 was. I realized that don't put the power of schedule making in my hands. Give me a schedule to work with. I don't like when you just throw it. I didn't realize this, but I don't like when you just throw everything in a pot and tell me to pick which ones I want to watch at each time. Because now you're putting the onus of the decision making on me. I don't like that because I don't know where to start. Give me a schedule. Give me a structure, right? And when it's structured, and because what happens is when you're saying, okay, this is happening at 3, this is happening at 4. Well, now you have a plan. You have a plan already mapped out, and you're like, okay, we know what we're doing here. That's what we did on Day 1. Mm-hmm. That's what the 5 of us did on Day 1. It was there was that awesome point where you was like, all right, we'll meet back here in 30, right? Like that kind of thing. It was like being at an actual con. I liked that. That was cool. When you throw all of it into, it was like Comic-Con at home, and that was disappointing. And yeah, they didn't have, your audio problem came right back up because God, yes. None of that was uniform.
The Zoom calls were terrible. I'm sorry. They were like, there were these reports that like they sent stuff to the people for Day 1 of like, basically sent them, here's directions how to do it. Here's a green screen to put behind you. Here's a microphone. They did not do that for the television side of things. And it was really
not at all.
It's like, I'm sorry, but the television, like the Flash panel, which is the same panel as before, just extended by a few minutes. But basically, that, Black Lightning, Superman and Lois, they were all just basic Zoom calls, and they didn't even sound that good. And it was really disappointing. So you had the revelation about the scheduling. I will say I'm kind of a mix. I think since I was by myself, like truly by myself, not even digitally with you guys, I liked being able to just be like, okay, I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to watch this one. And then... But if we had been able to watch stuff together, I would have preferred set the schedule, start at 12 o'clock, next panel's at 12:30, next panel's at 1, or whatever the times were. Pros and cons to both. I've heard some people talk about how like this second way was nicer for people who live like in Europe or Asia because the time zone issue isn't as big of a deal because you still can just get up and watch the ones you want to watch. Andy from Holy Backcast was talking about that. He's living in China right now, and so for him, he didn't have to like totally screw up 3 days of sleep to try and watch it all live like he did the first one. Overall, I think I would prefer the first one. Let's touch on a couple panels. The very first thing I did was look to see on Superman and Lois, did they put any kind of trailer? Because I thought the pilot had been in production. I've since saw things that made me think that the pilot actually hadn't been in production or not for very far. Either way, they didn't have anything in production. It was just Betsy Tulloch, Jim Lee, and Tyler Hoechlin. Am I forgetting someone? I think it was just the 3 of them. Maybe I'm forgetting someone.
No, there's what was?
He's one of the Tom Helbing, I think.
Thank you. Yes,
that's one of the producers. Used to be a producer in The Flash, moving over to Superman and Lois. Not a ton of news out of that one, other than Hoechlin is getting a new costume. They flat out said when they designed this costume, they designed it for temporary use for crossovers, not for the rigors and the schedule of we're making a show. I thought that was interesting, not something I had thought about. So. It makes me wonder how like duct taped together that costume is when they filmed it in like Elseworlds and Crisis and stuff. And then we already know a lot of it's going to be in Smallville. and Lana's going to show up, which is going to, okay, so Lana and Clark obviously have this history, but there was this awkward point where they make a point of saying, but Superman's not going to have an affair. And suddenly, that's all anybody was talking about in relation to this panel. It's like, I'm sorry. If we're getting to a point where we're worried that Clark Kent is going to cheat on Lois Lane, even with Lana, that would bother me. So I'm glad they said they're not doing it, but I'm like, what are you doing that's going to make people think that's even a possibility?
Yeah, well, because I saw that, right? And here touches on another issue that I had with day 2 was I didn't watch that panel until later. So I saw all the chatter about it first.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see people, and really what it comes down to, Brent, is people already have a preconception of how they feel about the CW.
Sure.
So they think, oh, well, yes, that's a total CW move to have him cheat on Lois with Lana. And it's like, how often do you guys watch the CW that you think it's still doing Gossip Girl type stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the CW still has that. Riverdale, for the record, Riverdale is a show. It's not a good show. It's ridiculous. It's absurd, but it's a fun show to watch from that. Like, I just want something stupid that's not going to make me think at all, that I don't really care about. I can play on my phone. Like, it's a good show for that kind of thing. Riverdale would totally do that kind of thing. If this was and I realize it's from Berlanti. Like, Riverdale is one of his shows. They would totally have the main characters. They do it all the time. People sleeping with everybody on that show and stuff. Yeah, but no, it's not freaking Superman. I don't know. I didn't like that. That's where the story went. Like, that's what everyone talked about.
Well, there's just no precedent for them to. I can't think of a massive precedent like that with any of the DC shows. Like, if there's one that I'm missing, please let me know. I know Barry kissed Felicity in one episode, but that was about it. Like,
but that was different. Like, he wasn't with Iris at that time. The closest you're going to find is probably Oliver Queen, season 1, Queen's Gambit, sleeping with Sarah when he was dating Laurel. You know, what established the background stuff. And then a little bit with Oliver in seasons 1 and 2 before he was fully established in his relationship with Felicity. Like, he ends up hooking up with Isabel Rochev in season 2. There's the girl in... Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her name. The girl from the season 5 that is in, like, the news reporter person. Like, a little bit there.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit with Oliver Queen, the character who was literally described as a playboy, but you don't get that with anyone else. Anyway, we're giving it too much time. The big news out of there is new costume for Superman, and while I like the costume they're giving him, I'm always up for seeing a new one, so I'm curious what they're going to do with it.
If they get rid of the cape clips, I will be very happy. See, that's the biggest thing I don't like on his costume.
I would think you'd have a shot at that, but they updated Supergirl's costume last year, and she now has them.
Yeah,
and
well,
so...
but in her case, I feel like with her, and I'm not entirely certain why they did this, but they wanted to give her a full suit. They wanted to get her out of the skirt.
Well, they probably did it because it's freezing cold in Vancouver for Melissa to film.
Why? I don't know why it took them 4 seasons and a pregnancy for them to do that.
Well, this was before the pregnancy, though. But yeah, either way, 4 seasons.
But I think that, like, in her case, like that's they were trying to get her out of the skirt, and okay, fine, cool. Cape clips don't work when you're wearing a mini skirt like she had, but in his case, I mean, you gave us an awesome Kingdom Come Superman costume with Brandon Routh. Can you go that direction?
Not verified, but I heard reference that the same people that designed and built the Kingdom Come Superman costume are going to be doing this one too. I can't confirm that. I don't know if that's legitimate, but that's the talk I saw. That's the talk I heard. And
that's what I'm hoping.
With how much I loved Routh's Superman costume, yes, please do it. And you know what? Go ahead and put me on Team Red Trunks. If they come back, I won't be upset at all. If they're gone, that's fine too. I see that look on your face. I really don't care. But Ralph's costume to me shows, yes, you can do it, and they can still look fine. I would be fine with it. If they don't come back, fine, whatever.
Okay. I don't hate the Red Trunks. They're not my preference. What will be more annoying is when that debate pops up again, because
I agree.
I agree. It's almost as played out. In fact, in many ways, it's very much the same ridiculousness as the Batman.
It is absolutely one of those things of when did you become a Superman fan? Like, did the New 52 bring you in? Well, he didn't have them. Did Man of Steel bring you in? He didn't have them in that movie. Did Christopher Reeves bring you in? Were you a fan of Superman in the 90s or whatever? When he had it's very much tied to that. And
well, it is, but it's also weird because Reeves Superman brought me in, and yet I still preferred Cavill's look without the trunk. So it's whatever. It is what it is. I just hope that it is closer to the Kingdom Come. So I just don't like the cape clips. That's all. But yeah, that was pretty much all we got.
Other panels. You told me you liked the Black Lightning panel. I was really disappointed with it. I could have done without the 90s trivia game that just felt like we're supposed to have something for filler. And I realize you guys haven't shot anything yet. You know, they did that game with the Suicide Squad cast in day one. And I thought it worked because it really showed you like the chemistry the cast had. And we haven't seen that cast together yet. Black Lightning, we've now seen for 3 seasons. We know the chemistry this cast has together. We don't need that kind of thing. I don't know. To me, it felt like a waste of time, and I'm going to be honest. I treated it as such, scrubbed through to the end, and moved on to my next panel.
Okay. I'm going to be 100% real with you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a cultural thing.
Okay. Maybe if there's something there that I didn't get, then that's fair.
Okay. Well, it's because of what they were referencing in the 90s. Also, the fact that Robert Townsend was moderating the panel. Like there was
his microphone was bad, by the way.
Yeah, well, he was clearly using a laptop mic, and like all of them were in different. That panel was where the audio thing like really crept up because there were so many of them. It was the entire principal cast. Yeah. There was no one missing that's still alive in the show. Even Tobias, who I didn't think was going to be on that panel, was on that panel, right? So, like, Marvin Cronda Jones III was there on that panel, but, like, yeah, they all had different audio setups, and some were better than others, but I think almost all of them were using laptop mics in some form, and just some of them were closer to them than others. He wasn't sitting close to his. He was, like, a good couple feet back. But, no, it was just, because, again, the stuff that they were referencing and the things that they were talking about and some of the personal stories that they were telling, that was what I liked about it. That was what I was looking forward to with the panel. I wasn't looking for it for information. And I feel like that was the case with not just that panel, but with some of these panels you look at as like, okay, where's the information? Where's the new stuff? But that one I don't think that one was ever geared that way. The moment that Robert Townsend was listed as the moderator, I knew it was going to go in a different direction. Yeah. I knew it wasn't going to be a purely informational thing about what they're going to do in season 4. I knew it was going to take kind of a nostalgic Cress brought up Hollywood Squares, or Hollywood Shuffle, pardon me, which is his movie, Townsend's movie that he's most famously known for. Meteor Man came up, of course. So, like, that was the stuff that I loved.
Meteor Man,
like, really
coming to Patreon Squadcast movies soon.
Yes, in the not too distant
I
future,
have seen that movie, for the record, and read the book.
You have,
and read the book.
Oh, wow, really? Wow, okay, all right, good deal. That'll be fun. But no, that's why I like that panel, because there was this other stuff there. I hear what you're saying about information, and if you're somebody that is looking for that primarily from these panels, I totally get why you skimmed through it and why you would be disappointed with it. I dug what they did and appreciated that tack that they took with it. So I would just chalk that up to cultural difference. I would.
Fair enough. What about Legends? Did you see that one?
I did see that one.
They played a game there too, but that one I thought was a little more interesting again to go with ways, just because it was like, how much does the cast remember about the show itself? And it was funny when they would get questions wrong or get questions right, but it still felt like filler. It still felt like filler to me.
I didn't dig that moderator.
No,
I didn't dig the moderator. Most of these moderators, I was like, this is where the Comic-Con at home stuff started popping up, because a lot of these moderators is like, I don't know how well you fit with this, and that guy, he just, I don't know how well he fit with that whole group. I mean, you can tell the chemistry's there with the group.
Sure,
and
sure.
It was cool, like, seeing all of them there and telling stories and talking about the stuff. I mean, my favorite part of it was, Tyler Ash admitting, basically she feels the same way about Zari 1 and Zari 2 that I feel.
Yeah.
She does struggle with the fact that Zari 1 is gone and that she's kind of having to rebuild her character. So that was vindicating because that's how I felt the entire time about my favorite character on that show. But that was really just kind of all right. Like, a lot of these panels were recap.
They were.
And that one was definitely a recap panel for sure.
I didn't feel like much came out of the Batwoman panel either. It was basically just, here's Javicia Leslie, let you get to know her a little bit as a person. And for that panel, I think that was fine. They needed something like that. So I thought I'm really not going to complain about the Batwoman panel. I mean, okay, now I've seen her, I've heard her speak. Let's get some Batwoman footage now on that so we can see how she'll be in the role. It sounds like Ruby Rose's character Kate may not actually be dead, and that's part of the mystery. And I'll be curious to know how they're going to handle that, and real curious to know if they survive one more season, because I think this season is do or die for them on that show. Then when they get to like 4 or 5, will Ruby Rose come back?
It's really weird to apply the phrase "do or die" to any season of a DC CW show when we realize that Legends of Tomorrow was about to proceed into its 6th season.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that, but I will say that I did dig that just about all of the principals were there. I think, save Doug Ray Scott. He was the only one that wasn't there, the actor who plays Jake Kane. But everybody else was there. Megan Tandy was there. Nicole Kang was there. Rachel Skarstens was there. So I really think Cameron Johnson, of course, was there. I think it was cool to see the principal main cast interact with Javicia.
Yes, I agree.
That was awesome, and I like the way that they did it. They had the main cast in there first, and then they brought her in like after like 5-10 minutes.
So at first I was like, do they really not get her for this? Like I was like, they only have the rest of the cast, and then because you could, I scrubbed forward real fast, saw she was at, and go, okay, she comes in later. Let me rewind back, and now I actually watched the list. It's like I have to know. It's like, are they really? She's the one I most wanted to hear from on that panel.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the Flash, because I want to ask you about the movie Flash.
I didn't watch the Flash panel, just to let you know.
That's fine. You heard the quote that I'm going to ask you about. That's all that matters. Superman: Man of Tomorrow, the new animated movie. They had the whole thing on there, and I watched it. I watched the whole thing on there. I enjoyed the movie overall. A few nitpicks here and there, but on the whole, I thought it was a really well done story with a little bit of animation trouble here and there. On the whole, I liked it. If they wanted to continue that world, I would definitely be in for that. It was weird though, because it was like CW style, like you would watch so much and then you'd have like a commercial. In this case, it was a commercial for something DC related, but
okay.
And they were real short, like 20 seconds. Only 2 or 3 of them for the entire movie, so it wasn't like a big problem. The weird thing was one of them was a commercial for Superman: Man of Tomorrow, and I'm like, what? I'm watching you right now. Like, this trailer you're showing me has scenes that I have not got to yet in the movie. I'm like, what are you doing? But no, it was well done. You know, Martian Manhunter shows up, Lobo shows up, Parasite shows up. It was cool. I don't want to go into any more detail or spoilery than that, but it was good. There was a spoiler discussion that Travis and Greg did on Superhero Discussions that I thought was well done, and Travis really summed up a lot of my feelings about the movie. But I would recommend it to anyone who has the opportunity to see it. The Flash. Q&A, and they said, oh my gosh, is it Barbara?
Yes.
Said that, paraphrasing, this movie's going to reset everything, but not forget anything. Twitter went nuts. Twitter went nuts.
Yeah, you know.
What was your reaction to that quote? I mean, we know what Twitter did, what Twitter does, but what was your reaction to that quote?
This was also part of the problem, is because the way that FanDome Day 2 was structured, I was seeing news on Twitter before watching a panel. And that's how I first saw this quote. I didn't even know where the panel was until someone told me where it was at after I had already seen the quote. So I see the quote, and fortunately, the person that I saw it from had quoted it exactly. They hadn't paraphrased
the entire thing.
The entire thing. So I look at it, and I read it, and I go, great, this is how the rest of the day is going to go, because everybody's going to just blow this thing. You know, the problem is that the minute they said Flashpoint at all with this movie, like however long ago, the wheels started turning for everybody. We overthink these things very heavily. Barbara Muschietti probably did not mean what you think she means when she said that, right? I mean, we already know that this movie is going to touch on the multiverse. We know this. Not only because we're going to see, not only because Flashpoint has been referenced by the Muschiettis and by Ezra and everybody else, but also because we know Keaton's in it. Mm-hmm. Batman 89, so we know the multiverse is in this movie. So when it comes to resetting, all we know is that this particular movie is going to officially introduce the multiverse concept to the DCEU, a concept that already exists in the DCCW, right?
Right.
So that's all it says. It doesn't mean anything for Zack Snyder's Justice League. It doesn't mean anything for the Shazam movies or Aquaman 2. It means nothing for the rest of it right now. It just means that movie is going to change. It's going to introduce the multiverse. That's all it means. But people are acting like, oh, it's Grace was right. It's the reset button. No, just pump the brakes, people. Pump the brakes. Stop setting yourself up for things that are not going to be. We've been down this road before, Brent. Remember season 3 of The Flash?
I do.
I read the Flashpoint trade paperback that summer in preparation for that season. I only needed it for the first episode.
Yeah, if that.
And that was if that, right?
If that.
If that. I didn't learn my lesson. I read Action 775 and watched Superman versus the Elite.
My fault. I suggested it to you.
Right, and I really didn't need it for that.
Nope.
We've been down this road before. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You will not fool me a third time.
I read Superman Red Sun for the first time in preparation for the Red Daughter coming to Supergirl. And it's like, nope, really didn't need it at all. Cool comic. I enjoyed the comic, so I'm glad I finally read it. Check that one off the to-do list. But I did not need it, no. So, yeah, I think people are blowing things a little bit out of proportion. And reset everything but not forget anything is like DC's MO, right? I mean, there's stuff from before Flashpoint that's still referenced. There's stuff from before Crisis that got referenced in the Crisis era. Stuff from the Crisis era that got referenced in the Flashpoint era, which, New 52. Stuff in Rebirth that goes back to New... Like, it's what DC does. It's what DC... It might be the most comic accurate thing they could ever do to have some sort of reset, but still have somebody who remembers and some acknowledgement that it all happened to. It's DC. That's what they do. I think that's all the panels from DC Universe that I checked out, or from DC FanDome. I mean, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
A few. I watched the Pennyworth panel, and there actually are 2 big developments out of that that are kind of spoilery. So if somebody doesn't want to know this about Pennyworth, just pause for a bit or skip forward.
Skip forward. Don't pause. That's not going to get it done. Pausing
Fair enough,
good.
Yeah. Pausing will not work. You're right. Skip forward. Okay, so one thing that we know for certain, definitively, is we know Lucius Fox is going to be in season 2. We also know that Martha will be pregnant.
With which child?
We don't know. Bruno Heller just said that she's going to be pregnant. That's all.
I had heard she was going to be pregnant. That one filtered through to me.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you asked with which one, and so now you're hinting at something that I don't know about with respect to.
There has been speculation, innuendo, Elseworld things where Bruce had a brother, and so that's why. That's just why I ask. That's all.
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, they could pull a Krypton. Krypton pulled some misdirection with respect to pregnancies and like who is this child for at least a season. Like they put us in a couple of different directions with it. Like they made us think, oh, it's this, and then they're like, no, it isn't, and then they're like, yes, it is by the time the show actually ended. So I don't know, Pennyworth could do the same thing, but those were the 2 big things out of Pennyworth. I'm trying to remember. See, I didn't watch every panel. And I'm trying... Oh, you know what? Okay, there was one panel that I did watch that I thought was really cool. I watched a panel about all the villains. It was a villains panel. And they had, like, Jason Isaacs and Clancy Brown. Marvin Condon Jones III was on this panel. And Troy Baker, who's voiced the Joker. And they were just talking about, like, villains. It was a panel talking about how villains operate in the DC universe and, like, what they are and how they do stuff and whatnot. It was interesting. Marvin Condon Jones III, it's hard to think of him as anything other than Tobias Whale at this point, but he said he would love to play the Joker. And I'm like, that would be really interesting to see him play the Joker. You know,
I'd be down with that.
That'd be really cool. But no, that I dug that panel. I did like that panel. The other, I guess, biggest panel that came up, and this was the one that really highlighted the technical difficulties that they had for the first hour or so, was the really short 2-minute clip from Tom Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, where he revealed the Justice League theme for Zack Snyder's Justice League. He revealed a piece of it.
I did hear that, yes.
Yeah. Now, I liked it. I think it fits that world, right? Like, I hear that music, and I think this fits the tone that was established by Hans Zimmer in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice way more than Danny Elfman's whatever he did. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't necessarily blown away by it like everybody else was. Like,
sure.
On Twitter, everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, chills." I wasn't there with it. And I guess part of that is because a lot of people were saying it sounded like the Justice League Unlimited theme, which I haven't watched Justice League Unlimited, so I don't know what that. I don't have that same connection.
To me, it seemed like the audio equivalent of like a still photo comes out. Like Zack Snyder put out a new unseen still of Batman for Batman Day, right? And then you get all the people who are like, this one shot is better than 2 hours of the entire Justice League theatrical. Like, to me, it felt like a lot of that. And I'm not saying I didn't like it. It was fine. I'm saying, for me, I'll just tell you if I like it more when I tell you how it hits me in the actual movie. And as someone who's not as into scores as other people, it really has to hit me for it to be memorable to me. Right now, I only listened to it once. I couldn't begin to tell you how it sounded. I just remember thinking, okay, that was fine, and moved on. Like, it wasn't, for me, particularly memorable, but it wasn't like, oh, that's gross either. Like, nothing like that. So, no, I will say I agree. It's going to fit Man of Steel, BVS more than what Elfman's themes did. Because, like, as much as I agree Elfman's Batman theme is the Batman theme. Like, I agree with him when he says that. But that doesn't mean it fits every incarnation of Batman, and it did not fit this incarnation of Batman. Just like I wouldn't play it before Batman Brave and the Bold either. Like, it's not the same. It doesn't fit every incarnation. I wouldn't want to watch the Batman 66 movie and have the opening be Elfman's theme song. It's just not the same. So,
well, and you know, the one that always gets debated is, you know, I would not put Williams's Superman theme with Cavill.
No.
Or vice versa. Zimmer's theme doesn't fit with Reeve either.
And Williams' theme, to be fair, is one of the most iconic pieces of musical history, period. Like, from movies. It just is. Like, people, regular, general audience people know that means Superman. Like, it's just an icon. But, again, it doesn't mean it fits with every single piece of Superman that there is. And, no, it really didn't fit there, especially because in that movie it was, unless I'm misremembering, it was used when he was fighting the rest of the League. And I'm like, that's like the total wrong time to have that, as when he is out of his mind being crazy all and fighting the other heroes. That's the wrong time to play it. That's a different discussion. Regardless, it's coming. I know Scott said he really liked it. I saw several other people liked it. I'm glad they liked it.
No, nothing against anyone that did feel chills for it. Of course, I did not have that connection. I look at it like I just said, it will fit better. It will fit this universe. It will absolutely. It sounds like a progression. So yeah. As far as that goes, I can't think of anything else notable at this point about FanDome Day 2. Well, hang on. Sorry, I did. There's one thing I will bring up that I just remembered, and that is, I did watch, and I didn't necessarily need to see this panel. I just wanted to see it for how it went. I watched the Stargirl panel.
Okay.
And I was specifically watching it to see how weird it was going to be to watch Jeff Johns in this panel. It was weird.
Was it filmed before all the Ray Fisher stuff started happening the last month or so?
No, it was. I get the distinct impression it was filmed after, because the Ray Fisher stuff started July 1st, so they would have.
That would have been really early.
Yeah,
That would have been way outside the time frame of all the others.
Yeah, and it was, the panel was moderated by Leah Thompson, who you'll know her as Lorraine McFly from Back to the Future, and she was also in Howard the Duck.
Okay.
I didn't know this, but she directed Shiv Part 1.
Okay.
Because she has been directing TV. I completely forgot about that. She moderated the panel. The panel was Breck Basinger, Amy Smart, and Angelica Washington, who plays Beth, and forgive me, I cannot remember the name of the actress that plays
Yolanda.
Wildcat, Yolanda, and also the actor that plays Rick, Our Man, the new Our Man. The entire new Justice Society was there, and Amy Smart and Jeff Johns was there, and so I'm sitting there like, okay, how is this gonna go? Is Johns just going to be there and it's going to mostly be them? No, he was active, and they were very like, thank you, Jeff, for letting us do this. And, it was in many ways, and I don't know if this was just my perception of it, it seemed like they were going out of their way to praise him.
Dave from DC on Screen. Dave from DC on Screen said the same thing. He said it sounded a lot like that.
Yeah, and I just...
You want to know why I didn't watch it? The fact that I didn't watch it has nothing to do with Jeff Johns. I didn't watch it because at this point, between the 2 days, I had already seen panels for Titans, Flash, Black Lightning, Legends, Superman, and Lois. All these shows that don't have anything filmed or next to nothing filmed that told me next to nothing about the upcoming season. So I was finally just, I'm like, I'm not even going to bother. I looked to see if he was there. I turned it on long enough to see, Johns is there. They didn't pull it or whatever. And then I just closed it. I didn't watch it, so whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad panel. I don't want to make it seem like it was just this really like... If you don't know the Ray Fisher situation, and if you don't have any emotions invested in it either way, you wouldn't have noticed it. I feel like, or you wouldn't have totally noticed it. You might have noticed some things. You might have noticed, oh wow, they're really like appreciating Jeff Johns. Those of us in our circles, if you watched it, yeah, you noticed it. And it just really seemed like it was a kind of a cheerleading effort, at least from my perspective. And I from other people's perspective, knowing what we know about the situation. And he was on that panel, and he was also, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I know he was in the Three Jokers panel.
I didn't watch that one either.
Jason Fabok.
But I'm still in my, am I going to read that comic now or wait for DC Universe? And now this would be a good time to bring up. I do plan on waiting for DC Universe because we got the news this week that DC Universe is going the Marvel Unlimited route, comics only. Sounds like even the old TV shows are getting pulled, though I wasn't entirely... It does seem that way. But regardless, all the new DC Universe shows, Doom Patrol, which is getting a third season, Titans, Young Justice, Phantoms, all that stuff is going.
Harley Quinn is getting a third season.
Oh, okay. Hadn't heard that.
That is official.
All of those are going HBO Max. So DC Universe, comics only, same price. And I went back and listened to what we talked about last time this topic came up, and we both basically agreed that we thought comics alone, for the price it is, the value is there, but that it's a hard PR story. And that the better story would be if they were making a little bit better. Well, a little bit better would be, say, matching what Marvel Unlimited does. Comic comes out today, in 6 months it's on Marvel Unlimited, right? DC Universe is now doing that too. So I'm not sure when it starts.
I am. It starts in January.
Okay. So
I think, and I want to say it's January 21st, or I could be wrong on that date, but I know it's.
I read that date somewhere, so maybe that was that. But 6 months behind. So the same current prices. It's what? It's like $7 a month or $75 for the year.
It's $7.99 a month, $74.99 for the year, which is how I have it. I have an annual, so, but yeah, it's the 6 months, and
I think that's great. I love it.
And they're rebranding it. It's going to be called DC Universe Infinite. So the idea is, they couldn't use Unlimited.
I think that name is a little bit of a mouthful. DC Universe Infinite. Whatever. I don't care. It's fine. Infinite is a word that means things to DC. They like that word. It's like, right. It's not quite Crisis level, but it's close. And
it's like number 2. It's like if not Crisis, it's Infinite. for sure.
The
or Infinite Crisis.
The only other thing that might come up more often is the number 52, because they're a big fan of that number as well, and always have been. Even before the new 52, they love 52 for whatever reason. But regardless, I love it. So DC Comics, 6 months you can read them, just like Marvel Unlimited. So here's where I'm like, okay, Marvel, can you please steal this from DC Universe? In DC Universe, you can just add a series to a list, right? Like you can make your own list and you can add it to it, and like, this is my list for this person, this is my list for that. And when a new issue is available, it's just in that list. You don't have to go hunt it out. You don't have to go searching for, here's a list of everything that's, all you have to do is go to that list. Like I had one for Deceased before I went and just bought the trade, and it's like, when it was only issues 1 and 2, but when issue 3 became available, I looked, it was just in my Deceased list. And I'm like, I love that. So I'm definitely going to be keeping my DC Universe subscription. This does not make me want to do away with it. I have the annual one as well, but right now I have full plans to just renew it. So definitely good news. And if it's focused purely on comics, they should get the back catalog up. I would imagine that'll start going up even faster than it has been. And it's been going at a pretty good pace. So to me, this is good, positive news.
Oh, it's great news. It was kind of the worst kept secret. I saw a lot of people on Twitter that were like, Ray, you called it. You were right. And I'm like,
yeah.
Didn't we all call this?
I had a couple people.
We all say this?
People say that to me, and I'm like, well, we all kind of wanted this. It was the obvious way to go. So
yeah, like I'm not going to take credit for this one. We all kind of figured this was the logical way to go, and we wanted to see this happen.
Maybe we just collectively willed it out there to happen, and I'm fine with that.
Cool,
but
I'm good with that. But another cool part of it is the digital firsts, like the digital. And what excites me about that is one, the idea of, just having this is part of the future. You're not going to get rid of. You don't want to get rid of the brick and mortar. You don't want to get rid of the physical issues just yet. But this is starting to push forward into the digital realm with like these digital exclusives. This also could potentially be a way that certain books that we might be worried would go away in physical form could actually survive in digital form. We haven't heard anything about Far Sector yet, but hopefully at the very least they would, continue to do that digitally. That's how I'm reading it. Well, but
somebody told me that was like a 12-issue maxi series or something. And if so, if nothing else, let's let them get to the 12. I want the story to finish. I was thinking about Far Sector, actually, because between Marvel Unlimited and DC Universe now, I'm actually considering stopping all new comics. Like, just dropping all of them the day they come out, which would be really hard for me because it'd be like, Green Lantern stuff. And I know I haven't been up to date on the Morrison stuff. I'm still only read his first volume of that. I need to read some more. But it's like, or Superboy or Spider-Man. I'm like, the idea has crept into my head because I'm like, at this point, the bulk of my reading is going to be 6 months behind. So maybe I should put all of it 6 months behind, if for nothing else, and to avoid spoilers for the stuff I haven't read yet. So the idea is in my head. I've not made any final decisions. I'm just mulling it over because I know that first time, like, I'm gonna really, if I do it, I'm gonna really struggle. Like the first time a Venom issue comes out or Spider-Man issue comes out. So it might be one of those things that, like, when Far Sector's wrapped up, when the current Venom run is over, whenever that is, that might be the trigger point for me to do it. But just the idea going into my head is not something I ever imagined.
No, because I don't know that we ever thought that it was going to get to this point with respect to this medium, but we're there, or at least, yeah, we are. We're essentially there, and it'll take root officially with the rebrand and everything in January. And as you're right, we don't have like complete particulars. All we know for certain is that DC Universe Originals are now becoming Max Originals, which that makes the most sense out of this. Is you're not going to get rid of any of this stuff. You're just going to now, when I do DC TV Squadcast, I'm going to be watching Harley Quinn on HBO Max. I'm going to be watching Young Justice on HBO Max, which we got a title for season 4 for that. Which I think that was part of FanDome, but I don't know that it came out.
I think it came out during FanDome, didn't it?
It was during FanDome. I don't know that it was like on a panel.
Oh, yeah, kind of like the Doom Patrol news. Like the Doom Patrol news was tweeted that day, but it wasn't said in fandom. It was social media. But yeah, Young Justice Phantoms is coming, and I didn't catch a release date or anything like that, but I mean, I'm definitely gonna watch it. So
yeah, but so now that's going to be a Max original. Doom Patrol already was a Max original, and you know, some people were talking about, oh well, I saw somebody talking about, well, that'll be the make or break season for Doom Patrol, and I'm like, well, no, season 2 was already on HBO Max, so I feel like that may be that might have helped their decision as far as doing that on HBO Max. And then I also saw some people say that they hope the Titans shifting to HBO Max means that they will get their affairs in order as far as story structure and like cohesiveness.
Well, let's work on those finales. Let's work on those finales.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that the team has changed with Titans with respect to that. So I didn't. Apparently, the panel for that was extended. I watched the version from day 1. I didn't watch the day 2 version.
Same.
Was there confirmation on whether or not Donna is coming back? Even though that's pretty much a worst kept secret.
I'm not going to say there was confirmation. I didn't watch the panel. I did see a clip going around where the moderator basically laughed at how Donna was, killed, and Connor Leslie then was laughing at it too. And you could just, I looked at the clip, you could see it on her face how ridiculous she thought that was. So, I mean,
because it was ridiculous.
No, not confirmation, but yeah, I mean, we're going to see her back.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, it just makes all the sense in the world, especially how it ended. But yeah, so no, that is big news. So yeah, we're just they're also continuing. This is also important for anybody that doesn't have HBO Max yet, but you have DC Universe. They have extended the deal. There's a deal right now where I, being a DC Universe annual subscriber, I pay $4.99 for HBO Max.
Right.
That deal has been extended to October 30th. If you don't have it yet, you have till October 30th. Sign up for HBO Max at $4.99 a month if you were a DC Universe customer.
And didn't you tell me they're giving away a couple gift cards or something, like vouchers to the DC shop or whatever?
If you are a yearly subscriber, if you're an annual, you'll get a $25 DC shop credit. If you are a monthly, you'll get a $10 DC shop credit. This is also in January
cool. Well,
either January or February.
Well, then in January or February, I will look at the DC shop and find something to buy.
Yep. And same here.
I have no idea I haven't even looked at that in so long. I need to start looking, and I'll end up finding something that probably is going to cost me a little more money, but I'll be like, hey, $25 off. I don't care.
That's totally what they're hoping we all do. So it's all good.
All right. Before we sign off this week, especially since we missed last week, you want to knock out a few listener questions?
Sure.
All right. This first one from Damon is definitely for you. He says, given the history of Star Trek, the show's eras are roughly set 100 years apart. The original series is about a century after Enterprise, and Enterprise and Next Generation is likewise about a century after the original series. Is Next Generation take place a century after the Picard era?
No. He's saying, no, okay. The timeline, Enterprise is first, then there's the original series. TNG is it's not quite a century. It's like 3/4 of a century after the original series.
Really?
Yeah. The original series
Did not know that.
The original series starts in the year 2266. Discovery is 10 years before that. Right? For the first 2 seasons of Discovery. This 3rd season of Discovery is 950 years after everything. So that's a totally different scenario. But all right, so you've got TOS from about 2266 to 2295. TNG starts in 2366 or 67. So, because that's the idea, TOS is 23rd century, TNG is 24th century. And so Picard is tail end of the 24th century. It's in the 2390s.
I did not know they were that far apart. Because I've seen Picard and Shatner together, and it's or Kirk, I should say. Regardless, I didn't know they were that far apart. So his question is, with Strange New Worlds and Section 31, which are set in the original series era, why isn't there a show coming that's going to be after the Next Generation era, beyond Picard, a century after that?
He's basically asking, why don't we have something closer to the prime time, to the majority of the prime timeline? Because like I just said, that's not what Discovery is going to be. It's the far distant future. It's almost a full millennia after those events. I feel like it's wide open for them to do that. It's been kind of interesting. Like if you go to, like if you read any of the like expanded fiction, like Peter David's New Frontier, which I read the first couple of books I've been really liked way back when, and some of the other stuff, they've touched on things that happen like right after. And I guess right now, Lower Decks is probably that show at this point. I feel like Lower Decks either happens around the same time as Picard or maybe just before Picard, like as far as its timeline, because it's clearly after TNG. Like the show is clearly, because of the uniforms and some of the stuff they do, it's clearly after TNG, but it takes a lot of hits, a lot of beats from TNG. I think it's the possibilities are still out there. I think the reason that Discovery made their decision to go so far in the future is because they didn't want to follow canonical rules.
Okay.
They wanted to, and that they had to in the first 2 seasons. When you're taking place 10 years before Spock joins Kirk on the Enterprise, or Kirk rather joins Spock on the Enterprise, Spock was already there. Because that's what Strange New Worlds is. Strange New Worlds, the new show with Captain Pike, Spock, and Number One, that's the Enterprise before Kirk took over.
Oh, okay.
So it's weird that Discovery is continuing, not strictly chronological, like it's going way far in the future, but what happens after season 2 of Discovery will continue. It's just going to be in the Enterprise. It's just going to be the Enterprise's voyages. It's going to be everything that happened on that ship before Kirk showed up. Because I'm going into Trek lore here, but the Enterprise, that particular ship, the very first one, had 3 captains. There was Robert April, who captained it for five years, and then Pike did 2 5-year missions. He was on that ship for 10 years, and then Kirk took over. Like by that point, Kirk had served on the Farragut, and he'd been in Starfleet for nearly a decade, worked his way up to be a captain. He didn't take over the Enterprise until he was in his 30s. So you would think at some point we'll see Kirk in Strange New Worlds. We don't know when or how that will work out, but yeah. So that's how it can get kind of confusing. And it's what's really confusing is he mentioned Section 31, and that's supposed to take place in where the most of the prime timeline is. But Michelle Yeoh's character Georgiou, who's kind of she's in Section 31. And she's supposed to be the lead in that show. She's still on Discovery 950 years in the future. We don't know how that's going to work yet either. So, listen, Star Trek, almost, it's not quite on Doctor Who level. I guess it's subjective. It's all subjective. Temporal mechanics and time travel in Star Trek, you will twist your mind into knots. Okay. Trying to figure out a lot of it.
I'm going to ask the most basic of basic questions right now. And this is going to show just my extreme ignorance to Star Trek. I have to ask now, based on everything you just told me. Is the Enterprise in the Next Generation the same Enterprise that what Captain Kirk was on?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, I know that's right. Probably a dumb question.
Well,
so it's just a different ship that they name the same thing.
Yes,
I can accept that.
Yes, there have been the one that, all right, Kirk technically served on 2. There's the original Enterprise, NCC 1701, which is what you see in Discovery. It's what you see in the original series.
Okay.
It's what you and what happened. I'm going deep into lore here for a second. What happened was the series ended. And then the first movie came out, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Well, 18 months of time kind of passed. The ship got refitted. It was rebuilt into looking like how it does in the original movies. And for the first 3 original movies, Star Trek: The Motion Picture to Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock, that is a refitted version of the ship from the show, from the original series. It got destroyed at Genesis. In Star Trek 4, they gave them a new one with the exact same model of refit, but it was called the Enterprise A.
Okay.
And that's the one you see in Star Trek 4, Star Trek 5, and Star Trek 6. That ship eventually got decommissioned for the Enterprise B, which we see in Star Trek Generations in a flashback in the year 2295. In between, it went through its run with Captain John Harriman, and then the Enterprise C came up with Captain Rachel Garrett, who we saw in an episode of the 3rd season of TNG called Yesterday's Enterprise. And then came the D, which is a Galaxy-class ship. That's the one from TNG. Galaxy-class starship, the Enterprise D.
So that's Enterprise D.
Yes, which was destroyed in Star Trek Generations. That one was destroyed in Star Trek Generations, which brought forth the Enterprise E for Star Trek First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis. The last 3 TNG movies. That's the last Enterprise that we have technically seen on screen. If you really want to dig into expanded universe stuff, there's an Enterprise J, right? They kept going. They kept going, but yes, it is just a line that they continuously... Because the Enterprise is essentially Starfleet's flagship. Actually, not essentially. It is Starfleet's flagship. So they continue its line with a new model, a new class every so often.
Gotcha.
after the old one decommissions. So
well, there you go.
Yes. That concludes today's TED Talk on the USS Enterprise in Star Trek. But no, listen, to answer that question, I think at some point, they will do a show that is set after TNG. I mean, Picard is clearly set for Picard. They haven't dug into a new crew yet. I think they will. I think they will. I don't know when. I couldn't tell you when, because they've clearly got some very structured plans now that I'm excited for, but they will. They'll do a show like that at some point. I do believe that. Okay, this next one from Sowell at Alvin Gross 8. Are you excited to see a live-action version of Pinocchio from Disney? Also, what are your thoughts on the casting of Tom Hanks as Geppetto? I don't want to say excited, because I can take or leave Disney live-action remakes. I can. I haven't had, I haven't watched a ton of them. The one that I watched in theaters last year, which wasn't live-action, it was live-action animation. Lion King, didn't really care for it. Would prefer the original animated. But I have a connection to the Lion King. I don't have that much of a connection to Pinocchio. Yeah. So, I don't know. There's really not a whole lot of juice for me either way with this particular... with Pinocchio.
To answer the question, I'm a lot like you with the live action Disney remakes. I take or leave, whatever. I've seen a couple of them. I haven't seen Aladdin yet, and that's the one I was probably the most interested in. It just hasn't gotten to the top of my priority list. Tom Hanks as Geppetto, cool, whatever works. I don't anticipate me seeing this one theatrically, but I'll watch it on Disney Plus. All right, from Whistle, he wants to know who our favorite Masters of the Universe character is, and would we want to see another live-action Masters of the Universe? I guess I'm going to say He-Man for my favorite Masters of the Universe. I know that's probably a boring answer, but I don't... I liked He-Man. I don't have a deep knowledge of all the other character names, so I'm going with He-Man. And sure, I'd be up for another live-action movie.
I don't necessarily. I watched He-Man when I was a kid, but I don't really have I'm not particularly partial to a version of any of the other characters or any of the cast members. So yeah, I'm totally He-Man. He-Man is my answer for sure.
Sure. All right. Go ahead.
This last one from Travis. What would you consider a successful box office for Wonder Woman 1984 and Black Widow during these crazy COVID times? This is going to seem like a cop-out answer, Travis. I don't think there is one. Truthfully. And the reason I say that is because I think everybody's taken a hit this year. So I don't know that... what am I measuring it against? Are we talking, make its budget back? I mean, the problem is that you've already lost money with respect to your operations. In Wonder Woman 1984's case, you've blown about 2 or 3 different marketing campaigns. You've blown money on 2 or 3 different pushes that you had with different release dates, because you've had 6 of them now. So, I don't know. I honestly would side on the notion that there isn't necessarily a successful box office possible for these, barring a miracle, barring some crazy miracle where, oh my goodness, the all theaters reopen in December and everybody flocks to see them, which is not, don't see that happening. But I don't know that a successful box office is possible for either of these films.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I get what you're saying. I think the big caveat is we may not be able to see it because break even. If Wonder Woman, which I looked up, the only number I could find for Wonder Woman's budget was $200 million. So traditionally, that would mean it needs to get close to $600 million for break even when you factor in the marketing factor and how much of the cut of the ticket sales they get in the U.S. versus China versus Japan versus Europe versus other countries. Traditionally, roughly 3x the budget is your target number for break even. If Wonder Woman came out and somehow did $600 million, I think that would be a massive success right now. I don't think it's very feasible. The other thing is, I think it's really hard to judge. And Black Widow, the numbers I found were 150 to 200 million. So 3x those. Those I think would be huge successes if they were able to get that high. I don't really think that's very possible though. So I'm going to say if they made back just the production budget, like even just to the 200 mark, I think that would be not successful, but not disaster either. Like worth doing. But here's the bigger key. I'm thinking of Mulan, which Disney has not reported numbers, but October 7th, they have an investor day. You can expect quite a bit of Disney Plus news, and somebody is going to bring up Mulan that day of how happy they are with the numbers and stuff. There's a report going around that analysts basically peg it that in the U.S. alone, the estimate is Mulan did somewhere in the neighborhood of $230 million. If that is... If that is even close to accurate, I think that would be a really strong number because they keep a bigger cut of the buck of that revenue. If you bought it through Disney Plus, they keep all of it. If you bought it through Disney Plus like .com, if you bought it through iTunes, let me clarify. If you bought it through Disney Plus on iPhone or Apple TV's apps, then a cut of that would go back to Apple. I don't know what that cut would be. Probably not the 30% that most apps do. I'm sure Disney gets a better deal than that. Probably more like 10 to 15% of that goes back to Apple, which would still be a better deal than what they get from your movie ticket cut if you bought it and went to AMC down the street. And so it's hard to say. In theaters, though, Mulan has bombed pretty hard, like only around $30 million in China last time I looked. And I'm not trying to use Mulan as Mulan has lots of out of the movie things for why people, especially in China, would not want to go see it. Lots of issues with Mulan. So let's set all that aside for example, and just looking at the hardcore numbers. So we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $260 million combined. To me, that feels like that's probably pretty good. They probably have made their budget back or close to it. Not to mention, that was only for that first week of sales. It doesn't count anyone else who's done Premier Access since then. And I know people still are because I'm still seeing people talk about it. My wife's cousin referenced getting it, and it was like a week and a half after it was available. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we just did it we're doing it this weekend or whatever." Like I know people are still buying it. People are still seeing the movie overseas, just not very many of them. It's hard. It's harder to judge. We absolutely cannot compare these box office numbers to anything before. Like we can't say that Wonder Woman 2 failed because it didn't make the same amount of money that Wonder Woman 1 did. Like that would be
people are going to say that, but
they are, but they're wrong, and they're just wrong. Like that's a poor comparison. But I think today making them budget back when they don't have massive revenue streams coming in, I think that's important. I think they need it. I think that's a huge source bringing some money in for a change because they've already spent a bunch of this money. And yeah, like Wonder Woman constantly reshuffling their date. And I know I made the New Mutants comparison, whatever. They keep having to redo marketing stuff for it. Like you still see marketing, and that's biting Black Widow a little bit, not quite as much, but there was some stuff in like Entertainment Weekly or something that came out recently, and it's like you can tell this was all planned based on other release dates, and now there's rumors that Black Widow is going to get pushed back, and I'm still hoping they do Premier Access for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back. WandaVision is probably the next MCU installment we're going to see at this point, because I think Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think they want that to come out after Black Widow. It sounds like there may be something tying those two together there. So if that's the case, WandaVision, which is like, I was talking about this with the Marvel Alliance guys, WandaVision has its own little side pocket of like Wanda, Loki, Doctor Strange, Falcon Winter Soldier, Black Widow. They're like, there's two separate tracks right now. Eventually they'll converge again. That's why I think WandaVision, so it's like Black Widow is going to have this, but Black Widow hasn't had like the full marketing that like Wonder Woman had picked up more than once on. And so it's really hard to tell. So like, if that budget is right for Wonder Woman, $200 million. If that budget I saw is right for Black Widow, $150 to $200 million. Just matching the production budget, I think, has got to be seen as a win. And Warner Brothers and Disney both are just going to have to play the ultra long game on this one. And it might be years before they truly like see a profit off these movies from the value they bring to their streaming services, the value they bring to Blu-ray sales, home release, things like that. This is a really hard question to answer.
Well, and also value of this may be even extreme long term, but value of how many and how do you measure how many new subscribers you got to the service?
Right, and
as a result of
that
it?
Number I saw was not including any new. Like it didn't say of the 230 million, how many of those were new subscribers or were like me who already had it, or like you didn't buy it. So like me who already had it, and so those subscribers also bring value to it. That it's maybe not direct revenue, but it's like if you weren't already subscribed, it's an extra $7, and if they keep the subscription, it's an extra $7 per month.
Right. Right, it's a long term. It's part of the long term game for sure.
You know how we don't really get numbers from Netflix? Like every now and then they'll say a number, but we really don't know. We just have best guess from industry analysts. Mm-hmm. I think we all need to just come to terms with like going forward. That is probably all we're really going to be able. Definitely for any of these hybrid releases like what Mulan was. Like we're never going to get the full picture again. We're not going to have it. And
I question that only because I feel like at some point it also has to do with advertising, and part of the shift in this entire industry is the advertising. Like where's the advertising? Like, going from traditional TV spots and like billboard ads to stuff, OTT and commercials and stuff that's like playing on Facebook and Twitter and everything like that. In order to charge rates for advertising, you have to have some numbers to back what your rate is. And that's why the Nielsen rating system exists. That's why ComScore and all that exists. We don't have anything like that yet for digital.
But that's not the same kind of advertising. Like there's not outside advertising on HBO Max. So it's not like they have to say we have this many subscribers, this many people are going to see it.
Well, but they kind of do. I mean, as far as from an advertising like from the standpoint of like if you're talking like you're saying it's all native, like they're just advertising themselves, like no one is doing
you turn like when I got a notification for the Mandalorian season 2 trailer the other day from Disney Plus, like I could call that an advertisement, but that's not one they paid for. It's not like let's put it this way. I'm not opening Disney Plus or HBO Max and seeing advertisements for products to buy at Walmart or Amazon. So it's not like they have to give out their numbers to people to say, hey, come join us because we have this kind of advertising. Do you think it's going to go that way?
Well, there is news that
Hulu is kind of that way. I mean, to your point, Hulu has commercials.
There is news that HBO Max is going the Peacock route and doing a different tier for lower for people that don't necessarily want to. It's like here. Let me.
But even that would be if it was similar to Peacock's.
It's ad supported.
Yeah, so like Peacock has their free level, and so I could see the numbers getting out for the free stuff, but not the paid. Like there'd be like if Disney wanted to advertise Black Widow on Peacock, right? Peacock would have to tell Disney, here's how many subscribers you're potentially going to see it. They would only have to say the free ones because the ad-free people will never see it regardless.
Right.
And so I feel like all that's going to still be held close to the vest, just like Netflix does.
But this isn't really for the consumer. It's really for the executives. Like, right. The people that need to be convinced, why should we advertise on your service? Well, look how many subscribers we have. Look how much money we brought in with this. Like, that's just how these types think. This is
no,
and it's
I get that.
it's how all of that goes.
But if you're a paid Peacock subscriber and you're Disney considering advertising on Peacock, you don't care what the paid subscriber count is because they don't see the commercials.
No, you would still care because again, it's about the price. It's about how much they're charging. So you can tell them, hey, your price is too high because you only have this many subscribers or you only have this many eyeballs, right? Because what other way is there to measure the eyeballs?
But it's got to be the free subscribers because Disney is only going to care about the people who might actually see the ads. Since, like, for example, Disney doesn't care about me for... now, let's say Warner Media wanted to advertise on Hulu. I have the ad-free plan of Hulu. So when Hulu says, okay, we have these different packages and here's your levels of subscriber counts, well, they shouldn't even include me because I don't see ads on Hulu.
I see what you're saying. I think it's inevitable that at some point there's going to be... there will be reporting for this. I don't think it's going to be... they're not going to allow it to be as fuzzy as it is. Because think about,
you're right. I just I don't know.
Think about it from this standpoint. What does Forbes do now after that? Like, if it goes fuzzy like that, what do they report? What job does Scott Mendelson have anymore? What job does Mark Hughes have anymore? I'm not saying the studios necessarily care.
They don't care about that.
I'm not saying that they necessarily care. Someone does. Someone stands to, like, you're going to have the idea is you've got a lot of hands in the till and everybody's going to try and grab for a piece of the pie, even as the pie is shifting. It's not going to be that easy to just say, oh, you don't have a job anymore. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe Forbes just goes straight to doing whatever. But
well, the problem is you're putting, it's mixing motivations in a way that they shouldn't be mixed. The streaming service, they don't care where someone like Forbes is getting their numbers. If they do care, they'll want to know where the leak, like Netflix, for example, they want to know where the leak is coming from. That's where they will care. They won't care about that. And if Disney and HBO Max if Disney, let's set aside HBO Max because you just said they're potentially looking at the Peacock model. If they're able to stick with the Netflix model, no commercials, no nothing. The only things you might call an advertisement on Netflix are for Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Promos.
If Disney Plus is able to do that, they don't care about all the numbers and stuff. They don't care. They don't have to report the numbers to anybody. All they have to do is report the bare minimum that's required for stock purposes and for shareholder purposes.
So what's the difference between reporting earnings and reporting subscribers?
Well, subscribers alone at Disney Plus, subscribers doesn't tell you what kind of subscriber are they. Are they annual? Are they monthly? Do they have it free through the Verizon deal? HBO Max, do they have it like I do where it's just part of my internet plan? Do they buy the $5 a month from DC Universe? Are they paying $7 a month? Subscriber alone tells you how many subscribers. It's a good number to have for... Here's your part where it could potentially come out. Production studios. When they're shopping around, am I going to go to Apple TV? Am I going to go to Netflix? Am I going to sell? Well, how many people can watch it on Apple TV? How many people might be able to watch it on HBO Max? But for an advertisement, advertisers are not, let's put it this way, advertisers shouldn't care about people who they can't put their advertisement in front of. And as a customer who doesn't have ads, your ads are irrelevant to me. So I shouldn't count in your calculations.
Okay, so then perhaps it's not about the advertisers, but what it is about, you just brought up the productions. It can definitely be about that.
That could be the end.
If a movie or a show like gets produced on one of these streamers and doesn't do well, and there won't be a sequel, or it gets canceled, people are gonna want to know why. That's the reason why.
And even that, like, you see that at Netflix all the time. Why is this show canceled and that show's not? And it's always just best guesses. And that's why when I tell you $230 million domestically from Mulan's Premier Access, I want to stress that's not a hard number. Disney didn't release that. You know, the studios released their box office dollars. Like, that's all public knowledge. Like, Disney did not say that number. It's all analysts, which is why that number is not going to be 100% accurate. It may be a little low. It may be a little high. It may be a lot low or a lot high. We don't know. It's just an analyst number. That's all we have.
And right, because it's like measuring it is a lot more difficult than measuring ticket sales at a box office. Mm-hmm. But I think that, on some level, because I see this happening with the ratings as well, at some level, what everybody wants, I think, is a third, well, not the studios necessarily, because the studios want to manipulate whatever information they can, but a third-party service to measure all of that. I mean, that's what
I would love that. I would love that.
Well, that's what happens with ratings. Like, that's why Nielsen exists.
But it exists for the advertisers.
Right. Well, the same thing is going to happen. The same thing will happen on a digital level for the advertisers. But as far as, like, the actual cost and, like, the budgets and the gross and the revenue and all that, I could see that happening in a production sense. I still think it is going to happen. I don't know that it will, but I believe it will. I just feel like with all the number crunchers we have out there, somebody's going to be like, hey, we need to do this, or this needs to happen. I do think it's going to happen.
But again, look at the motivations. For Netflix, they have zero motivations to do that.
None of the studios do.
Well, not entirely. Peacock or Hulu that does serve ads. Peacock that serves ads, and if HBO Max serves ads, then you get back to your area of a third-party independent person to measure this stuff actually does make sense.
To sell ads, yes, but if we're talking about like what the budget for Brave New World, whether or not Brave New World gets another season, or the budget for this new Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reboot that Peacock just picked up,
there's no motivation for that.
Universal doesn't want you to know that.
Again, Peacock's hard because as a free subscriber, I think you'll be able. I'm not sure how Peacock works.
I don't know.
Do you have to be paid for that one?
For the premium, yes. If you have the free tier, if you have the ad-supported tier, I don't think you can't watch Brave New World.
Okay, so Brave New World on Peacock paid tier. Again, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares.
So that's So
they have no motivation to share those numbers. The biggest place where this might possibly come out would be through the production studios, because there it does they do care, but a lot of this content is still from in-house production studios. And if it is, well, you're not going to get anything there. Like when the next Disney movie comes, it's a Disney. But if it's a movie that Disney buys to put on their service, like Hamilton, for example, those are the places where you might see some. So we might get bits and pieces.
Or Apple buying Greyhound from Sony.
Yes.
That's another example. Yeah. So.
Or Netflix buying, several movies from studios that they just decided to go a different way with it or whatever. So bits and pieces, but a full picture, I don't think we're ever going to see. So I don't think we're going to really be able to know what is a successful box office for Wonder Woman until.
To be completely fair, this is a misnomer. People argue this up and down. We've never seen a full picture. We don't see a full picture now.
No, because we don't know the specific we don't know we always get budget estimates. We don't know the budget hard numbers. We don't know, and we don't know the exact deals that different exhibitors have with the studios and how much money goes back and forth for revenue sharing.
And they've never told us exactly what the marketing budget was. And I know somebody out there will pull up, I got this from the Deadline Reddit, or I got this specifically from the source. I don't care what they sent you. You will never sell me that it's 100% accurate.
And you might, we could probably find that information for individual cases, but not as a whole. That's right. The 3X rule is it's a rule of thumb. It's a guideline. It's a direction to look in. It's not a hard set, which is why a movie that makes a little bit more or a little bit less than that may or may not be successful still from a financial standpoint. Not to mention, what does successful mean? Because to a movie studio, successful might mean break even on this project. Successful might mean make $300 million in profit on this project so we can take some risk with some of our other smaller projects. Like what is determined successful? In a pre-COVID time, $600 million for Wonder Woman might be profitable, but I would argue it would not be considered successful, even if that number was profitable.
And that's an argument that can go in several different directions then, and now has even more directions, and very different directions that I guarantee we're not ready for.
How much value does this bring to the streaming service? How like when Disney dropped Artemis Fowl on Disney Plus, they did a calculation there that it brought more value to Disney Plus as an add-on, as more content to sell subscriptions or to help retain subscriptions than it did if they had dropped it VOD first. I don't know.
And if they feel that way with Black Widow, which they could, they could have another report that says, hey, at this point in time, it is best for us to put this on Disney Plus. The theater people are not going to like that.
No, but it's also a Disney Marvel movie. They're going to shut up about it. They're not going. You're not going to see the outcry you saw over other movies.
I wouldn't think so, but some of those, every group has purists.
Sure.
Every group has, whatever, and it's like
you'll see it from the purists, but from the people in charge of the local, like AMC is not going to even begin to look at saying we are not playing your movies. They won't be the ones
no, they're not.
denying
No,
it.
no, they're not. No,
I'm sorry. Those are the movies that are keeping them in business, and so
they're not going to say that to Disney. They're definitely not going to say that to Warner Brothers. Although at this point, Warner Brothers is committed to helping them and like, oh, we love the theaters. We need the theaters, right? So that's a totally different relationship. Yes, no, Disney's totally in the middle of this. Disney, crazily enough, is straddling the fence. They really are. They're like right on the line in terms of how they're dealing with this entire changeover with respect to distribution. And it's kind of a weird place to see them there. You would think they'd take a side. They're not. They haven't taken a side.
They don't have
They're
to.
like on... No, they don't have to. But
they're big enough. With their movies are already successful enough. The public, once their movie's bad enough, they will go to where the movies are. And they're in a situation where they can just walk in and say, you're playing our movies because we know you're not dumb and you're going to play the Disney movies. And they have a worldwide streaming service. They are just very uniquely suited. They're the only one of these companies with their specific scenario.
It's just really weird that they're open. That what appears to be open-mindedness is actually probably flat-out arrogance on their part.
It could be both.
And it's not. And it's not an unwarranted one because everything you just said is correct. Mm-hmm. The people will. Yeah, we debated on whether or not people were going to watch a Black Widow movie beforehand. There is an argument now that more people will flock to a Black Widow movie just because of how 2020 is gone. Mm-hmm. They want to see an MCU movie. The question is whether or not they'll go to theaters, and that has nothing to do with their intent to see the movie. That has everything to do with their intent to go to a theater, or not.
Right.
If you throw Black Widow up on Disney Plus in November or December, I'm very confident in saying that will blow anything Mulan does out of the water with respect to numbers.
I just thought of this, and we're running long, so we should go. But I do want to mention, along with that $230 million for Mulan, there was allegedly like a 60% increase in app downloads. But I want to just clarify, app downloads does not mean subscription. I have seen people conflating that with... It is not the same thing because technically if I download it on my phone and my iPad, that's 2 app downloads, but I only have 1 subscription. Yeah. Technically, I could download them and not subscribe at all, or it could be people who re-downloaded them from the past. And so
free trials.
Well, Disney doesn't have free trials anymore. But
they don't? Okay.
No, that got dropped before Hamilton.
Okay.
A lot of people think it got dropped because of Hamilton. I don't know. Whatever. Disney doesn't have free trials anymore.
I could see that. All right.
Yeah. I get the logic. So it's like, whatever. Before Hamilton, that got dropped. But my point is, see, if they really saw that big of an increase in app down, that's great. But again, that also doesn't. Was it like? It's hard to know what that means. Like, does that mean people on their Fire Sticks? Are they talking just iPhones and iPads? Are they talking Fire Sticks? Are they talking Chromecast? Are they talking to Android tablets and stuff?
It's fuzzy. It's all fuzzy.
And even those numbers they're not like, it's easier to get app download numbers, but it doesn't tell you how the dollars are spent. So it's just, no. I wanted to clarify real quick this, like, either way, 60% increase or whatever it was in app downloads is a good thing. You want your app on as many devices as possible. It doesn't mean there's that many new subscribers. And it doesn't tell you how many will stick around, yes.
Exactly.
But
it doesn't tell you.
Even if they don't, you still got their $37 at that point.
So, right. Yes, for sure. So.
All right, let's leave it there. Sorry we went a little longer than expected there, but hey, last week we weren't here at all, so we'll just go to both extremes. So we'd love to hear any feedback you guys might have. You can email us at borderlessfans@gmail.com.
And we're also on Twitter. I'm at the Flightcast.
I'm at Brent Prime. The show is at Borderless Fans.
And as always, you can find us and the other shows in our network at squadcastmedia.com. Take care, guys. Stay safe.